the Chi-Town experience on the flight. Let me go tune in to Keek on the mic. He gon' make sure we get our news and highlights. When you get on YouTube, you better hit the like.
It sounds like the Chicago Bears are expected to add at these 3 key positions prior to the start of training camp. Hey, what's going on, Bears fans? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. As always, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. So I hope every single one of you guys have enjoyed your nice weekend, and I hope you guys are having a lovely Sunday as well. Before I go any further with today's episode of Keek on the Mic, I want to thank every single one of you guys for helping Keek on the Mic get to 18,000 subscribers. Yes, that's right, 18K officially on YouTube. And it's all thanks to you guys and the support that you guys continue to show myself and the platform. So once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for continuing to show so much love to the channel as we continue to grow here on YouTube, right here on Keek on the Mic. So Bears fans, have a little bit of an interesting topic of discussion on today's episode of the podcast. And once again, no one can argue that Ryan Poles has done a great job upgrading this roster over the last couple of months. You look at some of the additions that he has made over this offseason: Joe Thuney, Drew Dahlman, Jonah Jackson, Dayo Odengbo, Grady Jarrett, Colston Loveland, Luther Burden. I don't think any Bears fan can argue out there that Ryan Poles has done one hell of a job really upgrading this roster. And I think right now on paper, this roster is a whole lot better, especially what he has done in building the trenches on both the offense and defensive side of the football. But as we all know about Ryan Poles, this guy never sleeps. He will continue to work to really upgrade this roster, because I think Ryan Poles feels like this team is very close, especially with the right head coach in place and Ben Johnson and the coaching staff that he has compiled. And then just having belief that Caleb Williams going into year 2 with all these additions and having Ben Johnson, with him now, and the coaching staff around Caleb Williams as well, he feels that this team is ready to win right now. So we all know that Ryan Poles will never sleep in regard to continuing to really upgrade this roster. And according to Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune, he actually believes that the Bears aren't done making moves to fortify the roster before the start of training camp. Bears fans, this is what he had to say. He said an awful lot of hand-wringing is going on after the depth chart at edge, running back as detailed above, and safety. It's April. NFL rosters are always fluid, and we've already seen a handful of teams release players after the draft. More will become available, and I bet top dollar the Bears are keeping an eye on the situation while tweaking their short list at every position. Trust me when I tell you they're keeping closer tabs on this than you and I are. I'd keep running back, safety, and defensive end on the radar as positions where they might consider an addition. So very interesting. We've talked about a couple of these positions right here on the podcast. But once again, Brad Biggs made it very clear that he actually expects the Chicago Bears to add at the running back, safety, and defensive end position prior to the start of training camp. So first and foremost, let's look at the running back position currently on the roster. Of course, you have DeAndre Swift. I think for the most part, we thought that they would add more to the running back position going into the NFL draft. And we talked about how they attempted to trade up for Travion Henderson in round 2. Obviously that failed. They ended up drafting Kyle Monangai in the 7th round out of Rutgers. But when you look at DeAndre Swift, I think most Bears fans are okay with him as running back 1, especially with Ben Johnson in the fold. But then there's not really a clear number 2 option. Of course, you have Roschon Johnson, and I know the prior coaching staffs didn't really use him a whole lot unless it was short yardage situations, goal line situations. Maybe Ben Johnson has a bigger plan for Johnson. But then you have Kyle Monangai. He looked good at Rutgers. He is a 7th round pick, but just not proven in the NFL quite yet. Of course, you have Ian Wheeler. There's a lot of Bears fans excited about Wheeler, but he's also coming off a season-ending injury last preseason. And once again, no proven production in the NFL. And of course, Travis Homer. He's a good rotational back, but once again, he's more of a special teamer on this roster. So it makes sense why the Chicago Bears could still be looking to add to the running back position. We talked about Nick Chubb. We talked about J.K. Dobbins. Obviously, Nick Chubb is about to be 30 years old, a year or two removed from that ACL injury. Maybe he can offer some production this late into his NFL career. And of course, J.K. Dobbins is a little bit younger than Nick Chubb, but same thing, has struggled during his NFL career to really stay healthy. So I understand why Brad Biggs believes the Bears could be in the market for a running back prior to the start of training camp. So that's definitely a position group to keep a close eye on. Then moving to defensive end. Obviously, Ryan Poles did some work this offseason to add to the defensive line, added Dayo Odeyingbo to pair with Montez Sweat. But then after looking at Montez Sweat and Dayo Odeyingbo, you have Austin Booker and Daniel Hardy. And, Austin Booker showed some flashes in his rookie year. And then Daniel Hardy, once again, good rotational guy. But once again, not a lot of proven production there after, looking at Montez Sweat and Dayo Odeyingbo. It looks like, maybe Dennis Allen, new Bears defensive coordinator, may have a big plan for guys like Javon Dexter. Javon Dexter looks like he came back in really, really better shape, slimmed down a little bit. Maybe they will play him more at defensive end. But once again, I also agree with Brad Biggs that the Chicago Bears could look at maybe another defensive end prior to the start of training camp. Some names to keep in mind, maybe edge rusher Sedarius Smith. We talked about him before right here on Keek on the Mic about how he has played for every single NFC North team besides the Chicago Bears, has still shown some pretty good production over the last couple of years. Maybe bringing them in to pair with Dayo Odeyingbo and Montez Sweat could be a good unit, in rotation in regard to the defensive ends on this roster. Maybe an edge rusher and Matthew Judon as well. Once again, the age concerns are still there. And of course, you have to kind of worry about the cap situation, which we'll get into a little bit later on today's episode of Keek on the Mic. But those are two solid options as well in regard to the Chicago Bears possibly adding a defensive end prior to the start of training camp. The last position group that Brad Biggs mentioned was the safety position on this roster. Of course, you have Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker. They are both set to be free agents prior to this next season for the Bears. And of course, when you look at Jaquan Brisker as well, he has had a lot of injury history ever since he was drafted by the Bears a couple of years ago. I think he's going to come back and have a really, really big season. But after looking at Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker, of course, you have Jonathan Owens and Elijah Hicks. I feel like they are solid, not only special teamers, but rotational pieces to the safety room. And the Bears also added in undrafted free agency as well by adding Major Burns and Tysheem Johnson as well. So there is options out there as well for the safety room. But I think for me personally, I think I'm okay with how the safety room looks like right now on this Bears roster. If the Bears are really looking to add, I think running back and defensive end are probably bigger needs at this point in time for Ryan Poles and the Bears. So once again, I am totally fine with the Bears continuing to add, but there are some things that Ryan Poles needs to consider. One, you have to understand it has to be a good team fit. Will they actually come and produce for us here on this football team and help us win football games? You also have to understand the cap situation is a little bit funky as well. The Bears currently have $10.5 million in cap space, and keep in mind that Ryan Poles and the Bears still have to pay their rookies as well. So that doesn't reflect the rookie contracts that are about to come in right now. So it's one of those things like, yeah, Nick Chubb looks really nice. J.K. Dobbins looks really nice. Maybe adding Sedarius Smith or Matthew Judon looks really nice. But at the end of the day, do we actually have the money to afford them? So that's going to be the biggest hurdle. If they really want these guys, they may have to kind of restructure some contracts to add some cap space to maybe add a Nick Chubb, Dobbins, Sedarius Smith, or Matthew Judon. But I think it's a good idea to maybe explore the idea of adding a running back or defensive end prior to the start of training camp. Of course, just like Brad Biggs mentioned, there's going to be other teams prior to the start of training camp that will release players, and there'll be surprise names out there that maybe the Bears can add on a cheap team-friendly deal to continue to add and bring in competition for training camp at these three key positions. But Bears fans, how do you feel about the idea of the Bears continuing to add at the running back, defensive end, and possibly the safety position prior to the start of training camp? And if they do add at any of these positions, what names do you want to see Ryan Poles target to add on to the Chicago Bears roster? Let me know down below in the comment section. But as always, Bears fans, make sure you guys continue to hit that subscribe button and the notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms, and make sure you share this episode of Geek on the Mic with every single Bears fan that you know. But other than that, be back for all new Bears podcast right here on Geek on the Mic. Thanks, guys, and as always, bear down.
You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Geek on the Mic. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Geek on the Mic. You can go and subscribe, cause I be on it right. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Geek on the Mic.